A fresh row has erupted between the Ministry of Health and the doctors over the government's refusal to pay doctors for the 3 months they were on strike. The CS for Health, Dr. Cleopa Mailu, has maintained that the doctors will not be paid for work not done, while the doctors' union says the move is tantamount to victimization that is outlawed in the return to work formula they signed with the government. Correspondence from the Ministry of Health to the county government has instructed the counties not to pay the striking doctors for 3 months they did not work. A move that has been criticized by the doctors' union, which accuses the government of going against the spirit and letter of that return to work formula. That clause of the return to work formula states that there shall be no victimization by or of any party and instructs the government to withdraw immediately and unconditionally all disciplinary processes, including show cause letters, dismissal letters, and any other verbal or written threats of punishment. The CS, however, says the no victimization clause of the formula did not cover the salaries part and that the government will not budge on its stand to withhold the salaries. The union wants the government to uphold the dictates of the document it signed and fast too. It just isn't the issue of salaries that threatens the stability in the health sector. The move to hire Tanzanian doctors, despite opposition from the Medical Association from that country, is also being seen as a ploy to frustrate Kenyan doctors. The government, however, says the Tanzanian Medical Association has no say in the issue.
To drag the stalemate. You know, when we signed the return to work formula, there was a clause number 3 on issues of victimization, and that there shall be no victimization whatsoever, which includes even verbal threats and even written threats.
The letters of discipline, other issues, those are, we can look at them because we need the doctors to go back to work. Those who had been given letters, some had even been sacked, and many other issues. But there's no room for pay for no work.
Because you miss salaries on disciplinary processes. That's the only reason why anyone should miss a salary is if they're on disciplinary processes. So if you're not on a disciplinary process, then there's no reason why someone's salary should be withheld. Giving them only up to Friday for them to withdraw those circulars so that salaries are paid. Should those salaries not be paid by 31st of March 2017, then I think the Kenyans should know that their government, and particularly the cabinet secretary, the principal secretary, did not want the strike to end.
An association is not running government. There is no provision for consulting an association when a government is making decisions. Not here, neither in Tanzania.
I would want to advise the cabinet secretary and the principal secretary to drop their godlike attitude and godlike ego and a vengeance attitude, because I think it's already hurt the public sector.
And as I mentioned earlier, that is a story also headlining the Tanzanian paper, that is The Citizen. And of course also the doctors there have been expressing bugbears and fears in regard to their safety, and they have been assured there by also the Minister of Health in Tanzania, that is Mwalimu. And you can see the headline, Doctors' Safety while in Kenya is assured. This is the government of Tanzania. While we have another development here in the country in regard to the doctors from Tanzania, we can see also they're expressing their frustrations that they cannot truly let their doctors into the country because even them, they're suffering from a number of doctor to patient ratio as well, which is also wanting in this country. Allow me to also rope in our guests this morning to just comment on this as well. Was this move, quick off the mark before actually looking at some of the ramifications that might happen in Tanzania or in the country as well? And of course, we can see also from the KMPDU, we have the General Secretary there, Oluga Oma, expressing his frustrations as well in regard to the return to work formula, which is not being honored by the government. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, let's start with you, Dr. Mumo Nzau. In regard to this particular development of the doctors now not being paid their salaries in arrears, do you think the government should actually be taking a stand?
That's right, but Debarl, I'm not privy to all the information within the return to work formula. Right. I might not know the nitty-gritties, but I think the best thing is to maintain dialogue even after, there seems to be some kind of grandstanding on both sides, and it's not healthy because Kenyans need these services back in the hospitals immediately. And I don't see anything wrong with the government reaching out to other governments for assistance in the context of personnel. But I think it should be well discussed with all stakeholders on board.
So, which it seems they never really discussed, Professor Noah Midamba, because we have the doctors also expressing their frustrations that we have around over 1,400 doctors who are not employed. Some are on internship, and they've not been absorbed into the system, yet we are going full steam ahead to get doctors from Tanzania. Them themselves, they're expressing their fears in regard to their safety in this country, right?
Debarl, we need to be very serious about healthcare. Healthcare is one of the indicators of a well-developed country. Our medical practitioners need to be remunerated appropriately. Our training need to be one of the highest standard that there is in this continent. And we need to be able to speak clearly and respectively, whether the unionized group of people or the government. I think that clearly in this case, while I don't have any problem with the inter-country support within the East Africa community, there are more doctors in Kenya than there are in Tanzania per patient. There is no question about that. And while we have so many doctors in Kenya who are not, understand right now, gainfully employed, I don't see the rationale of bringing Tanzania doctors at this point.
So we shouldn't be bringing the Tanzanian doctors. Let's hear from Captain Wanderi.
Debarl, this is not a very good thing. It simply shows that our industrial and labor relations is not very up to standard in this country. For one, you have a situation of, as Dr. Mumo has said, grandstanding on both sides. You see, majority of the doctors in Kenya are actually employees of the county government. So it is actually the national government advising the county government not to pay the doctors who are on strike. The county government although they're interdependent with the national government, they can defy the national government. They are the employers. And if you remember during the return to work formula, the KPMDU was signing not just with the national government, but also with all the 47 counties. And later on we saw a situation where the union was also signing a return to work formula with Kenyatta National Hospital being an independent parastatal. So it is something that we need to mature up, that once we agree on something, especially on labor and industrial relations, then we need to respect that, for the reason that under the current constitution, now employment is already a protected right. Labor right is an economic right and therefore protected. On the issue of Tanzanian doctors, I want to disagree with my colleagues. Tanzanian government is on record as indicating that it is producing more doctors than it needs in the region. In fact, it is not only Kenya that is importing doctors from Tanzania. Other countries in the region too have, because Tanzanian medical training facilities seem to have been revamped up after some time, and therefore Tanzania is producing more medical personnel than they need in their own country, and that is on record, and there is no doubt about that. Whether the association in Tanzania is just like the Kenya Medical Association in Kenya. Those are not government bodies, and when it comes to exchange of personnel, especially on technical and expert areas, there is no relationship between associations and government. It's simply government to government. So basically, the government of Kenya is right to the extent that it wants to have doctors from Tanzania, because we are also talking about East African cooperation and integration. We cannot be talking of one thing and pulling the other thing. In the legal profession, we are already talking for the 5 countries to have a cross-border practice, and we've gone to an advanced level where the attorney generals now want to recognize a situation where a Kenyan can be able to practice law in Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, and the rest can also do it here, as well as Tanzania and Zanzibar. Then you have a situation where the medics are saying that their counterparts should not be. Let's get back to the issues at hand. You have Kenyan doctors claiming that they have 1,400 who've not been absorbed. Mm-hmm. If you are on internship, you're not yet qualified. I mean, you're not yet qualified. You cannot talk of an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor who is qualified. You have qualified until the moment you've gone through your internship or pupillage, and then you were gazetted as a person who has fulfilled the conditions of the training, because there are people who are thrown out even at the point of internship. So the fact that you have interns not absorbed means they are still going through training. And there is a very good reason and justification for the Kenyan government to attract the doctors from around the region. For the reason we have a situation where we have seen, even during the negotiations for the return to work between the union and the government, where you have back and forth, where the union leaders do not seem to get to a point where if somebody bets, don't continue betting further, because then you're going to break them. And they got to a point where they actually almost broke the back of the whole medical care in the country. And when you get to that point, then a responsible government will have to find a way of ensuring that it is we do not have a situation again where citizens are unable to access medical care for such a long period.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Apollos.
I disagree with Collins very much. We have a lot of doctors who are qualified now, they have finished internship, yet they are not employed. When these guys were negotiating, the cabinet secretary, Cleopa Mailu, was negotiating with Tanzania. So he was not honest, he was a hypocrite, and he pulled the rug under the legs of the doctors' union. The 500 doctors that are coming from Tanzania are coming to spoil, and they will be in trouble. How will they work in a hospital with the doctors who are not happy, yet they think they are coming to save us? Let them stay in Tanzania. We have never had any work agreement with Tanzania. Tanzania has been the most hostile when it comes to Kenyans going to Tanzania. They are very hostile. They do not want integration. How do they bring 500 doctors? That money that has been set up for the 500, can it not be topped up to our doctors? Because our doctors are not complaining of numbers.
But
they are complaining of little money.
It is cheaper to have these doctors because they're on contract and they're not really, qualified for, or really they don't really warrant for a mortgage and other perks as well. I can't remember so far, but I can remember mortgage and I don't know.
Because they are not happy with because our doctors are demanding their rights, then they bring these cheap doctors from Tanzania, because when you convert the Tanzanian shilling, they think they are getting so much. If they go to Nanyuki Hospital or Nyahururu Hospital, they will find a very hostile fraternity. So let them stay in Arusha, let them stay in Dodoma, don't come here.
Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa. They shouldn't come here?
They should not. Let them stay there. Don't come. Musije madugu sagu, kaeni kwenu.
Apollo.
That's Dr. Apollos for you. All right, Dr. Mustafa.
Thank you, Debarl. First of all, I think one thing we need to recognize is that what we've come out of in the last 100 days was not just a strike, but a serious conflict between doctors and the government. And that a sense of agreement and dialogue needs to continue. It's ill-timed, it's ill-advised for Dr. Mailu to stand and advise that we are importing doctors from Tanzania. It is okay. The government can ask anybody from specialists from any country to come to this country and work in Kenya, but that there is need to determine what is that specialist coming to do. And in the aftermath of a debilitating strike by the doctors, I think it is ill-advised and ill-timed. And the Ministry of Health should reconsider this decision to get doctors from Tanzania to come to Kenya. Secondly, doctors in Kenya seem to me to be better trained
than Tanzania.
And if we are, you know, we have to pay for quality. Quality comes at a price, and if we think that we are going to get doctors from outside Kenya because they will demand for less, and then Kenyans get less quality in terms of medical care, then this is not going to last in this country. Kenyans will become disappointed, and so we need to invest more in training here in the country, as we have done over the years, and make sure that we hire our own doctors first. The immigration, the Ministry of Labor has always been on the record saying that let us hire Kenyans, let us not hire non-Kenyans for jobs that Kenyans can do. And and I think it's part of the current government's manifesto that it creates jobs for Kenyans, should be creating 500, 500,000 jobs every year. That has not happened. And so if we are going to import non-Kenyans for jobs that Kenyans can do, I think it's not going to be right. And thirdly and lastly, if the 500 doctors that the Ministry of Health said is going to hire, if this was something that they started to negotiate with during the time of strike,
yes,
then it should not, you know, everything should be put on hold. This is going to anger doctors.
All
and
right.
If doctors today say they are on go-slow, not on strike, on go-slow because of this, we will be back to square one.
All right, so you talk about training, and you think our training is superior to Tanzanians. But what about the Cuban doctors, because they're coming here, Professor?
Well, you know, Cuba, Debarl, and I've been there. One of the credit that you give to Castro, although, you know, the country is really back to, in terms of development, comparing with the rest of the Western world, very low. But they put a lot of resources in medical care. And today, Cuban doctors and Cuban medical system is one of the best in the world. Compared per, say, 100 per population,
yes,
Cuba is very, very high in terms of training. And so the point that my colleagues here are talking about is, it is not only how many doctors we have, what kind of training, what kind of top quality training they have gone through. How many of these people are specialists that can deal with cancer, for instance? There are simple diagnoses that need to be clearly done in Kenya. But we end up sending people to South Africa and then medical care to India, which is costing us incredible amount of resources. Now, India is, of course, is very smart. India, like I said before, get the best out of America, out of Europe, then back to India, and then we Africans are going there for medical safari. For instance, there is a billionaire Indian called Abuja. Ahuja, not Abuja. Ahuja's built an hospital next to Cleveland Clinic. Cleveland Clinic is the best hospital in the world. And then another one next to Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. That Mayo Clinic is the best, the first best hospital in the world. And the clinic, both clinics, are filled up with Indians, trainees. What do those people do? They get the best out of the system, where there's a breakthrough in cancer, breakthrough in all other medical care. Then they run to India, they set up the system, then we are all going there in droves. Why can't we do that here? And I would say, let me give you a staggering statistic. There are over 3,000 right now as we are talking, Kenya medical specialists in America. There are over that number in Europe. Why can we bring these people back? Why can't we make facility? Why can we create incentive for those people to return to Kenya? So let's be serious about medical care in this country.
Okay, let's hear Dr. Mumo.
It takes a great deal of patriotism to build a country. And there is a lot of bad demonstration effect for people, for our children and all this across the board, because people are setting bad example. I'm not saying that the doctors alone are worried about money and so on. Of course, there are a lot of professionals in this country, including scholars, who are not respected. They're just underpaid and this whole thing. But we need to invest more in so that the kind of thing Professor is talking about here can materialize for us, because we have to invest more. The counties are young. There's been a lot of transitional issues and so on. The doctors were pretty uncomfortable with that system. Sometimes their pay was delayed and so on. But we have all the time to ensure that we have these hospitals in the counties upgraded, well facilitated, because that's where the doctors practice. And to ensure that the counties themselves, some will be ahead of others, but to ensure that beyond, there's a certain minimum working conditions and training conditions for our doctors.
Thank you.
So that we can retain them in those hospitals. But at the same time, some people should not want to have their cake and eat it at the same time. You cannot go to a government hospital, spend 2 hours for there, get all the money, and then you go to a private practice and you make all the money without caring for the people where you employ.
All right, let's hear from Captain Wanderi.
Yeah, unfortunately, Debarl, the medical practitioners in Kenya are abusing their position of privilege and in the country, in the sense that they are few. I want to remind them that something similar to what is happening to them of importation of professional colleagues from neighboring countries happened to the legal profession in the 90s. When in the 90s, immediately after multipartyism, the legal practitioners in Kenya, especially lawyers in the state law office, decided to go on a go-slow. They never went on strike. And so the government reacted subtly by negotiating with lawyers from Seychelles, from India, from Pakistan, and even Bangladesh. And we had a lot of those lawyers in the state law office. It was a stopgap measure, and about 300 were brought into this country. But the net effect was that immediately after they were brought in, the state was a bit comfortable. There was massive training of lawyers, and it got to a situation where it was a requirement to leave university and go to law school. A lot of advocates who left university directly in the early and mid-90s left University of Nairobi directly into pupillage, then into practice, without ever stepping at the Kenya School of Law. That was to compensate because of the small numbers that there were. So when you're in a position of you are honored, you're honorable profession, you are respected, it's prestigious. When you abuse that position, what then happens is a reaction. Let me just slightly talk about training. We have seen, and Professor has said it, a lot of Kenyans no longer, and this is, we must underline, a lot of Kenyans no longer trust the diagnosis of some of the doctors in this country, even the so-called senior and respected practitioners. In fact, a majority of common Kenyans, every day when you listen to the media, are raising money to go for treatment in India. I have sought from some of my friends who've gone to India, and they have indicated the problem in Kenya is not even what they call lack of equipment. It's simply Lone Ranger practices by the medical practitioners. In India, they have what is called integrated medical care, where you go to one hospital and you're going to find all the specialists in one. And when you take tests, all of them can read and see. They compare notes and give you a diagnosis, especially on lifestyle diseases. And a lot of people have gotten good care in that country. And this is where we should move. But although Dr. Mumo may not want to say it, there seems to be a mercenary attitude in our professionals in this country, and not just doctors. Talk about lawyers, talk about engineers, talk about architects employed by government. Instead of seeking to assist the country to move forward, their attitude is to reap as much as possible from the state without really giving back to the same society that feeds the state.
Finally, yes. Can we also be winding up on it, Dr. Apollos?
So when you give someone like Charity Giru to be the Minister for Health, what do you expect? When you give this guy Kiriofa Mairu, he appears like he doesn't want to develop the policies of public health, the director of medical services, because in this country we have very few, less than 20 oncologists. To be a neurosurgeon in this country, it takes so long. I think the senior people are very reluctant to train the people. So they want to be there alone so that they can be at Karen Hospital, they can be in Nairobi Hospital, Ron Rangers. We have no policy about health in this country, and that is the bad part, because when they go there, the other day we were told they stole so much money. What have we heard about that money that was stolen in the Ministry of Health recently? We have not been told anything. These guys are just like any other person. They do not want, and I have lived with a doctor. I have a doctor in my house. My husband is a doctor. My brother was a doctor. And these people cannot predict their life. When we go for Christmas or when we are going for parties, they cannot predict because of calls. During Christmas Day, when we are celebrating, he is called, please rush to the hospital. These people need to pay, and that's why they are frustrated. Let alone lawyers like this or academicians like us. We can predict our life, but doctors don't.
All right.
So they need more pay.
Okay, but what about their safety here? Because also some of them, maybe they've expressed fears that when they come in this country, they're not really assured about their safety, and this is what also the Minister of Health in Tanzania, Dr. Mwalimu, Ms. Mwalimu, she's raising. Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, I think the issue of safety and the security of doctors, that should not arise at all. Nobody's safety or security should be threatened, irrespective. Even that of a criminal, it should not be threatened. A criminal is arrested, taken to police, taken to court, charged, and taken to jail if found guilty. So if there is any person who thinks of threatening doctors or any foreigner for that matter, I think that is very wrong, and it should not, such a thing should not arise. We need to be very mature about some of the things that we do to Kenyans and to foreigners.
All right, thank you. Of course, that also forms the basis of our discussion. We've discussed much of it. You can see also what is on the front page of The Citizen. If you're in Tanzania, you can grab a copy of The Citizen for this developing story here in the country. Of course, they have expressed their frustration that they are actually importing doctors from Tanzania. And in Tanzania, also the doctors are expressing frustrations that, yes, they're not assured of their safety. And this is what the Minister of Health there, Ms. Mwalimu, is assuring the Tanzanian doctors.